Today I'm going to talk about 2 ways to dehydrate fresh peppers. I actually did this a few weeks ago. I volunteered at the food bank and they had lots of peppers left over, so I grabbed a bunch. And one of the ways I like to preserve food is through dehydration. So I ended up using 2 different systems to dehydrate them, and I'll tell you the pros and cons of each one. I started out with a knife and a cutting board and, cored the pepper, cut off the top, and just diced little tiny squares and put that on the trays. And then that became a little labor intensive because I had other things I wanted to do that day, preserving food. So I grabbed the food processor and I took the slicing blade and threw the pieces of peppers in there, and I ended up getting these kind of a totally different shape. They were more long with a smaller, I guess, peel edge. It was a different shape, and they had a different qualities. Both were good, but they're for different sorts of uses. They both dehydrated just fine and are delicious just as they are. I find I like to really eat dehydrated food sometimes right out of the jar without cooking it. But I took the diced peppers first and wanted to use them on a pizza. So I started rehydrating them with hot water and ended up rehydrating them for almost an hour. They were very, very tough because half of the surface, the top surface, the bottom surface was pepper, the top surface was peel or the skin, and that was tough, and it took a long time to get that to a point where I felt I could put it in my food. And when I did, I put it on the top of my pizza and it ended up baking just fine, whatever little toughness was left. And that was fine, except I was kind of in a hurry to eat, and I was making a pizza, which is usually put together kind of quickly for a quick meal, and the situation with the diced peppers, dehydrated diced peppers, was basically holding me back. So as I mentioned, I found the dicing of the peppers was too labor intensive for me anyway, so I went ahead and just put the blade on the food processor and ended up with a totally different shape. And those actually rehydrated way faster, like maybe in 10 or 15 minutes. Now, I used those in a pasta dish I was making, and the problem was that they were delicious and some of them held together, but because they were so thin, in the course of baking the pasta and in the sauce and everything, they pretty much dissolved. I mean, you still got the nutritional value, but if you wanted the so-called pretty value of having peppers there and other vegetables, if you like them visible, some people don't like them visible, that was a little bit of a problem. So I agree with both methods of doing this. They both serve different purposes. I think if I had flipped them, I didn't know that originally, but if I had used the diced peppers, the squares in the pasta, it would have been okay. I would have only had to have rehydrated them maybe for half an hour and thrown them in the pasta, which is already wet, and with the noodles, and cooked it, and the cooking process would have ended up rehydrating them just fine, and I would have had peppers in there that would be pretty and visible. And if I had put the other, the sliced peppers in with the pizza, that would have been fine too. It would have been less time to rehydrate them, and they would have gone right on the pizza. I could have started right as I was doing the crust, and then by the time I was ready, put them on. And I think the shorter cooking time would have meant that the peppers still would have kept their appearance and not disappeared into the sauce. So when you're rehydrating fruits or vegetables, sometimes shape doesn't matter. Sometimes it does matter. In this particular case, it did matter, and I'm sure I'll be rehydrating or dehydrating more peppers in the future, and if you're a dehydrator, you will too. So just my observations. Thank you so much for watching.